Ananya Sharma did not scream when the number 200 appeared on the fast money board. She did not jump. She did not grab Steve Harvey or fall to her knees or throw her hands in the air. She stood completely still, both palms pressed flat against the podium, and she looked at the number like she was reading a letter from someone who had been dead a long time. Then she turned to face her 4 children, Rohan, Meera, Kiran, and little Dev, standing in a line behind her, and she said 7 words that would be replayed 310 million times in the next week. "This is what your father built for us." Steve Harvey's clipboard hit the floor, not because he dropped it, because his hands opened and his fingers stopped working, and the clipboard simply fell, and he stood there, 6 feet from a woman who had just said the name of a dead man on national television, and his whole body went rigid, his jaw locked, and the sound that came out of him was not words. It was breath leaving his chest like someone had struck him. The taping was January 19, 2022, a Wednesday, colder than usual in Atlanta. The parking lot outside Studio 17 glazed with a thin layer of ice that the crew had salted at 5 a.m. The Sharma family arrived in a silver Honda Odyssey with 211,000 miles on it, driven from Edison, New Jersey, a trip Ananya had made in one shot, 14 hours, no stops except gas, because motel rooms cost money, and money was something the Sharma family measured in single digits. Their opponents were the Castellano family from San Diego, California, 4 brothers and their mother, Maria, a retired elementary school teacher who danced during the intro so enthusiastically that the audience gave her a standing ovation before a single question had been asked. 2 families, 1 stage. A perfect score that hadn't been achieved on Family Feud in over 3 years. But nobody in that studio knew what was about to happen. Vikram Sharma had been an electrical engineer. He had come to the United States from Jaipur in 2003 on an H-1B visa, married Ananya in 2005, and spent the next 15 years building a quiet, careful life in a 3-bedroom house on a tree-lined street in Edison. He coached Rohan's cricket team on Saturdays. He cooked dal every Sunday because Ananya's recipe, he insisted, was missing something, and he spent 12 years trying to figure out what. He kept a notebook, a small green leather notebook, in which he wrote 1 sentence every night before bed, a single observation about the day, a practice his own father had kept in Jaipur for 40 years. The notebook was in Ananya's purse the morning of the taping. She had carried it every day for 22 months. Vikram was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer on March 4, 2020, stage 4. The oncologist at Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital spoke for 11 minutes. Ananya later said she stopped hearing words after minute 3. Everything became shapes, sounds without edges, the doctor's mouth moving behind a mask. Vikram held her hand during the entire appointment. He squeezed once when the doctor said, "aggressive." He squeezed twice when the doctor said, "options are limited." When they got to the parking garage, Vikram opened the green notebook and wrote that night's sentence right there, at 2:15 in the afternoon, standing between a concrete pillar and their minivan. Today the road got shorter, but the family stays. The treatment cost $14,000 a month after insurance. Vikram's employer, a mid-sized telecom firm, had laid off his entire division in April 2020 when the pandemic hit. Cobra coverage lasted 18 months. After that, the bills arrived with a different weight. Chemotherapy, $8,400 per cycle. Lab work, $1,200 every 2 weeks. An anti-nausea medication that cost $967 for a 30-day supply. not covered, classified as supplementary. Ananya sold the house in Edison in September 2020. They moved into a two-bedroom apartment above a dry cleaner on Oak Tree Road, and the smell of chemical solvents drifted through the vents every morning. And Vikram joked that at least his shirts would always be pressed. Ananya took a job at a grocery store, $13 an hour, stocking shelves from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. She took a second job at a call center, 4 p.m. to 10 p.m., 6 days a week. Rohan, who was 16, started tutoring middle schoolers in math for $15 an hour after school. Mira, 14, babysat neighborhood children on weekends. The family operated like a machine, synchronized, purposeful, no wasted motion. And at the center of that machine was Vikram, who could no longer work, but who sat at the kitchen table every evening and reviewed the children's homework and quizzed them on vocabulary and made sure, even as the cancer ate through his body, that the structure of their lives held. He never told the children how bad it was. When Rohan asked about the prognosis, Vikram said, "The doctors are optimistic." When Mira found a medical bill on the counter and saw the number, Vikram told her it was a mistake and that insurance would fix it. When Kiran, who was 11, asked why Daddy slept so much, Vikram said the medicine made him drowsy, and he turned it into a joke. "Your father is becoming a professional sleeper, very competitive field." He built a wall of small lies, carefully mortared, to keep his children standing on solid ground while the ground underneath him dissolved. And that wasn't even the part that made Steve cry. Dev was 6. He was the youngest, the quietest, the one who watched everything and said almost nothing. He had his father's eyes, dark, still, the kind of eyes that made you feel like you were being studied by someone who already understood. One night in November 2021, 3 weeks before Vikram died, Dev climbed into his father's bed. Vikram was too weak to leave it by then, and lay beside him in the dark for a long time without speaking. Ananya was standing in the hallway. She could see them through the half-open door. Dev reached over and put his small hand on his father's chest, and he said, so quietly that Ananya almost didn't hear, "Daddy, I can feel your heart. It's still going." Vikram died on December 9, 2021, at 3:17 in the morning, in the apartment above the dry cleaner. Ananya was holding his hand. The green notebook was on the nightstand. His last entry, written 4 days earlier in handwriting that barely held together, read, "Ananya will carry them. She always could." The grief nearly destroyed her. She kept working, she had no choice, but for 3 months she functioned without being present, a body performing tasks while the person inside it sat in a dark room. She lost 11 pounds. She stopped eating dinner, telling the children she'd eaten at work, a lie that Rohan saw through immediately but never challenged. She developed a tremor in her left hand that she hid by keeping it in her pocket. The Family Feud audition was Vikram's idea. He had submitted the application in August 2021, 4 months before he died. The acceptance email arrived on January 3, 2022, 25 days after his funeral. Ananya read it on her phone during her break at the grocery store, standing in the cereal aisle, and she pressed her hand over her mouth and stood there for so long that a coworker asked if she was having a medical emergency. She almost declined. She almost wrote back and said the family had changed, that the person who submitted the application was gone. Then she opened the green notebook and read the last entry, and she called Rohan and told him they were going to Atlanta. Steve would later call what happened next the most important moment of his career. The Sharma family played like something was guiding them. Every answer was precise. Every buzzer hit was clean. Rohan dominated round 1 with 3 number 1 answers. Meera, quiet and focused, swept round 2. Even Kiran, who was 12 and nervous, nailed the steal in round 3 that put the Castellanos away. The Castellano brothers were gracious. After every round, Maria crossed the stage and hugged whoever had answered, opponent or not, because Maria Castellano believed that Family Feud was a celebration, and losing was just celebrating from a different angle. Fast money. Ananya and Rohan. Rohan went first, 156 points, an enormous number. The audience was already buzzing. Then Ananya stepped up. She was wearing a green dupatta, the same shade of green as Vikram's notebook. She answered all 5 questions in 9 seconds. The board counted up. 44 points. 200. Perfect. The studio fell completely silent. The numbers sat on the board, enormous, glowing. 200. It had not happened on the show in over 3 years. Ananya stood at the podium. She pressed both palms flat. She did not move. And then she turned, and she looked at her children, and she said, "This is what your father built for us." Steve Harvey's clipboard hit the floor. The audience inhaled as a single organism. Rohan's hands went to his head. Meera grabbed Kiran. Dev, sitting in a chair at the end of the family line because he was too small for the podium, looked up at his mother with those dark, still eyes. The studio fell completely silent again. Steve picked up his clipboard. He set it on the podium. He walked to Ananya. He stood in front of her. His voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper, but every microphone in the room caught it. "Where is he?" Ananya's chin trembled. "He passed," she said, "December 9th. Steve closed his eyes. He stood there, on national television, with his eyes shut, for 6 full seconds. The studio was so quiet that a camera operator later said he could hear his own pulse in his earpiece. Then Steve said, "Stop everything." A producer stepped forward. Steve raised one hand without opening his eyes. "I said stop." This was the 3rd time in the show's history that Steve Harvey had halted production. The first was for Marcus Delgado. The second was for Denise Rawlings. The third was for a woman in a green dupatta who had just spoken to a dead man on the Family Feud stage. But Steve wasn't done. "Tell me about him," Steve said. And Ananya told him. The visa, the dal recipe he spent 12 years perfecting, the green notebook with 1 sentence every night, the lies he told to keep the children standing, the last entry. She spoke for 5 minutes, and her voice did not break once, because she had been practicing, not for television, but for survival, for the daily act of saying Vikram's name without falling apart. And she had gotten very good at it. And that steadiness, that terrible composure, was more heartbreaking than any tears could have been. Steve's whole body was different when she finished. His shoulders were down, his jaw was loose. The performer was gone, and the man was standing there. "Let me tell you something," he said. "I once stood at the edge of everything. I had written a goodbye letter to my family. I was ready to mail it. And an old man at a gas station, a stranger, said something to me that I have carried for 30 years. He said, 'God's got a plan bigger than your pain.' And I held on to that sentence the way your husband held on to that notebook. 1 sentence. 1 day at a time." He turned to Dev. He knelt down so that his face was level with the boy's face. "Your daddy's heart is still going," Steve said. "You hear me? It's going right now. In you, in your brother, in your sisters, in your mama. It didn't stop. Dev nodded. He didn't cry. He reached forward and put his small hand on Steve Harvey's chest, the same way he had put it on his father's chest in that dark bedroom, and he said, "Yours is going too, Mr. Steve." The studio fell completely silent for the third time. 3 camera operators stepped away from their stations. A makeup artist in the wings was crying so hard that a production assistant had to bring her water. The entire crew, every grip, every gaffer, every sound technician, had stopped working. But Steve wasn't done. He stood up. He pulled out his phone. On the Family Feud stage during a taping, for the 3rd time in the show's history, Steve Harvey made a live phone call. He called Sundar Pichai. "Sundar," Steve said, "I have a family standing in front of me. Indian-American family. The father was an electrical engineer. He passed from pancreatic cancer. His wife is working 2 jobs. His oldest son is 16 and tutoring kids to help pay the bills. And this family just scored a perfect 200 on my show. I need you to hear their story." He put the phone on speaker. The studio listened. Ananya stood with her hand on Rohan's shoulder. Sundar Pichai was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "What does the family need?" Steve looked at Ananya. Ananya shook her head. She couldn't answer. Rohan spoke. He was 16 years old, standing on a game show stage, and he said, with a clarity that made 200 people hold their breath, "My dad wanted us to go to college, all 4 of us. That's what he worked for." Sundar Pichai pledged full scholarships for all 4 Sharma children through the Google.org Education Fund. Every penny of tuition, books, and housing, from undergraduate through graduate school, for all 4 children. The audience erupted. Ananya's knees buckled, but Rohan caught her, the boy catching the mother the way the mother had been catching the family for 22 months. But Steve wasn't done. "Everyone watching at home," he said, looking into camera 1. "This woman lost her husband, sold her house, works 2 jobs, and carried 4 children across a country on her back. And she just scored a perfect 200 on this stage. If you are watching this right now, and you are carrying something that nobody sees, a green notebook, a last entry, a name you can barely say out loud, I need you to know that the people you lost are not gone. They are in every answer you give. They are in every door you walk through. They are in your heartbeat." Maria Castellano was already walking across the stage. She had taken off her shoes. Nobody knew why, and she never explained it. And she walked barefoot across the Family Feud stage and wrapped both arms around Ananya and held her. And she said, loud enough for the microphones to catch, "Mija, he saw this. He saw every second of this." Steve awarded the Castellano family a return appearance and $15,000 from the show's discretionary fund. Maria hugged every Sharma child individually. She held Dev the longest. Steve turned away from the cameras. A stage manager who had worked Family Feud for 19 years told Entertainment Weekly that the silence in the studio lasted for over a minute. Not because no one wanted to speak, but because nobody could. The episode aired February 13, 2022, the Sunday before Valentine's Day. Within 96 hours, the clip had been viewed 310 million times. The hashtag #OneSentenceAday trended in 31 countries. The green notebook became a symbol. Within 3 months, over 40,000 people had posted photographs of their own one-sentence journals, tagging the Sharma family, writing single lines about their days, their losses, their reasons to keep going. Rohan enrolled at Rutgers University in the fall of 2023, full scholarship, electrical engineering, his father's field. Mira was accepted into a pre-med program at NYU. Kiran, now 14, had begun keeping his own green notebook, one sentence a night, a practice he told no one about until a teacher found it and read the most recent entry aloud at a parent-teacher conference. "Today I fixed the leaking sink, and I think Dad would have been proud." Dev started 3rd grade. He carried a small green notebook in his backpack. He didn't write in it yet. He drew pictures. One picture, drawn the week after the episode aired, showed 5 stick figures standing behind a podium and a 6th figure floating above them, with a heart drawn on his chest. Ananya found it folded inside his lunchbox, with a note in careful, oversized handwriting. "For Daddy." The Vikram Sharma Foundation was established in June 2022, funded by viral proceeds and a matching grant from Google.org. It focused on immigrant families navigating medical debt, insurance denials, and grief. The 3 things Ananya knew more about than anyone should. In its first 18 months, the foundation assisted 6,800 families across 12 states. It partnered with 3 hospital systems to create patient advocates specifically trained to appeal denied claims. 61% of appeals handled by the foundation were successful. Ananya quit the call center. She kept the grocery store job, mornings only, because the manager had let her cry in the cereal aisle without asking questions. And Ananya Sharma was the kind of woman who remembered that. Steve Harvey spoke about the Sharma family in a later interview with The Today Show. He said, "I have done this for a very long time. I have seen people win money. I have seen people win cars. But I have never seen a woman look at a number on a board and talk to her dead husband. She didn't talk to me. She didn't talk to the audience. She looked at that 200 and she spoke to him. And that is when I understood that this show was never about the game." In the apartment in Edison, they moved back, after the house sold, to a different apartment, smaller but on the same street. The green notebook sits on the kitchen table. It is open to the last page Vikram wrote. Ananya has not added to it. But every night, before bed, she reads his final sentence. "Ananya will carry them. She always could." And she closes the notebook, and she turns off the light, and she walks past 4 closed bedroom doors, behind which 4 children are sleeping with full stomachs and futures that reach further than any single life. And she carries nothing. Not because the weight is gone, but because it grew into something she no longer has to lift. It holds itself. It holds her. Some people measure love in years. Some measure it in distance. Vikram Sharma measured it in sentences, 1 per day, 1 line at a time, a record of presence that outlasted the body that kept it. And on a game show stage in Atlanta, his wife stood at a podium and proved that the dead do not leave. They just change the way they speak. The notebook is the voice now. The children are the answer. And the heart, the one a 6-year-old boy pressed his hand against in the dark, is still going. If you're still here, you felt something. Send this to someone who needs to feel it too. Subscribe and tap the notification bell. Every week, this channel finds the stories the world almost walked past and gives them the audience they deserve.